Racism, the evils of slavery, the caste system of the Jim Crow laws, and sustained prejudice even today have placed additional pressures on African American and other minority cultures. These unfortunate realities have contributed to a chain of events that oftentimes removed minority men from their homes, left young minority boys without male role models, limited growth and leadership opportunities for minority men, and created many other unfortunate challenges that have helped contribute to the current manhood crisis. Another dynamic that contributed arose when we shifted from an agrarian culture to an industrial culture. For many families up until that point, a young son would live the majority of his life next to dad. There was a great chance that dad worked in the fields behind the house. A son would see and be around his dad in the best hours of his day throughout all 4 seasons of the year. He would observe firsthand dad's work ethic, his creativity, his problem solving, and his leadership. In the wake of the Industrial Revolution, the norm for dad changed. Instead of working out of his home with his son tagging along, he would get up early, commute to work an 8 to 10 hour day, then come home later that evening. All he had left for his wife and kids were a few meager tidbits of himself. The leftovers. The Industrial Revolution helped set in motion the idea that raising kids was woman's work. A man's job was only to go to work and put a roof over his family's head and food on the table. Somehow, men are supposed to be okay with this minimal, non-connected existence. As a result, mom was forced to fill in for dad, and many boys grew up without dad being around, and therefore no male role model. He was taught almost everything by mom or other women in his life. These women were courageous and vital. However, it takes a man to call a boy to manhood. Then there was the negative impact of the war years on a generation of men. Many of our grandfathers and great-grandfathers were part of the greatest generation. They exchanged their youth for war, and the virtues they valued were sacrifice and duty. But many of those men who engaged in battle had trouble engaging emotionally with their families after those wars. Because of this lack of emotional engagement, many sons of war veterans felt their dads took their fathering lightly and were disconnected from them relationally. Unfortunately, it was true. The war had not only taken them away from their families, it had changed many of them. Upon their return, far too many knew only to focus on hard work or other escapes from their trauma. Many of them didn't connect emotionally with their families, and that lack of engagement impacted their children and grandchildren. Feminism came to life in the second half of the 20th century. It originally sought equality. That's a great thing because men and women are equal. But the feminist quest later turned to sameness. Some segments of the feminist movement basically said that there are no differences between men and women. That left many men unsure how to act, with a lack of clarity about their role as men. Some even raised the question of whether men have a role or uniqueness at all. Anyone brave enough to ask that question is often criticized. In a world of sameness, no one seems to know for sure what a man is, or if he is even necessary. Now we have a more recent phenomenon called extended adolescence. Too many of our young men are choosing not to grow up. Instead of transitioning to adulthood in their early 20s, many young men are delaying adulthood until their late 20s or even their early 30s. Instead of transitioning boys to men, our culture has created a third place between boy and man. Several books have even been written describing this phenomenon. One author calls these guys boys who shave, and another labels it guyland. This phenomenon has a number of our young men stuck in an extended adolescence. Guys who choose just to drift along in life and take no responsibility for themselves, much less anybody else. They are only focused on their own comfort and the next big thrill. They are flatline on things that really do matter, like getting out of debt, seeking meaningful relationships, pursuing a job, providing for a family, and living with a mission, a cause that is bigger than themselves. These are boys who go to college or go into life and create their own guyland. They are no more socially mature or responsible at age 30 than they were in their teens. Somehow our culture gives them a free pass for an entire decade or more. These are the historical events and movements that have impacted manhood today. This is our history. This is our story, and all have helped contribute to a crisis in masculinity. Where will we go from here? How can we deal with and overcome these realities? What will your story be?